April 2025 had 150 condo and townhome sales in Kelowna and West Kelowna. April 2026 had 115. That's a 23% drop from the same month last year. If you watched the Q1 breakdown, you might remember that March finished strong at 144 sales. April didn't even come close. I went through all 115 sales and I cross-referenced and the canceled and the relisted properties. In this video, I'm going to show you what the data actually looks like. I'm Mark with KelownaCondos.ca. Let's get into it. A quick note before I start. This data, it covers Kelowna and West Kelowna only. No Lake Country and no Big White. Leasehold condos are also excluded because they sell less frequently and at different price points, which is going to skew the numbers. So like I said, there were 115 total sales in April. 74 were apartments and 41 were townhouses. For context, here's how the last 4 months looked. January had 75 sales. February had 103. March, 144. April came in at 115. The trend had been building all quarter. And then April, reverse course. It didn't collapse, but the momentum from March didn't carry through. Apartments and townhomes, they always look different, so I keep them separate. For apartments, 74 units sold, and the median price was $440,000. For townhomes, there were 41 units sold, and the median price was $680,000. Apartments averaged 95.4% of the original asking price. Townhomes, they came in at 96%. I'll break that down by price range in a few minutes. So, bedroom counts are going to tell us what buyers are actually choosing. Let's start with apartments. 2-bedroom apartments made up 57 of the sales, which is going to be 77%, the same share as Q1. 1-bedroom apartments accounted for 10 sales, or about 14%. Now, 3-bedroom apartments had 5 sales, or about 7%. And there were 2 studios that also sold. So 3 out of 4 apartment buyers chose 2 bedrooms. That consistently tells you something about where the market is focused. Now, townhomes are different. 3-bedroom townhomes had 20 sales, which is 49% of the market. 2-bedroom townhomes had 15 sales, which is 37% of the market. Now, 4-bedroom townhomes had 6 sales, which is about 15%. In Q1, 3-bedroom townhomes were 67% of the sales. This month, they were 49%. With 2 bedrooms picking up more of the market share. Whether that's just a 1-month variation or a real shift is something that we're going to have to track going forward. Now, let's look at the price ranges. This is where apartments and townhomes are going to tell different stories. So we'll look at apartments first. Under $400,000, there were 27 apartment sales, which is about 36%. From $400,000 to $600,000, there were 31 sales, or about 42%. From $600,000 to $800,000, there were 9 sales, only 12%. Above $800,000, there were 7 sales combined. 78% of the apartment sales were under $600,000. In Q1, that number was 86%. So there's slightly more activity in the higher price range than the last quarter. But the core of the apartment market is still firmly below that $600,000. And as you expect, townhomes are going to be a little bit more. Under $400,000, there were no sales. But from $400,000 to $600,000, there were 15 townhome sales, about 37% of the market. From $600,000 to $800,000, there were 19 sales, about 46%. From $800,000 to $1 million, there were 6 sales, about 15%. Over $1 million, there was only 1 sale. So the sweet spot for townhouses is in that $600,000 to $800,000 range. 46% of the April townhome sales landed there. And remember, if you find this kind of data useful, subscribe. I'll do a market update every month with the same breakdown. It's the only place in Kelowna tracking condo and townhome numbers so specifically. Now, let's talk about months of inventory, which is the number that changed the most from Q1. At the end of March, using that month's sales numbers of about 144 sales, the months of inventory was sitting at 6.5. That's right at the edge of a buyer's market. In April, though, the sales came in at 115, and the active listings climbed to 960. So at April's pace, overall months of inventory is 8.3. For reference, under 3 months is a seller's market. Between 3 and 6 months is going to be balanced, and over 6 months is a buyer's market. Apartments, though, they're sitting at 8.6 months of inventory. Townhouses are about 7.8 months. In 1 month, the market moved from barely a buyer's market to solidly a buyer's market. And that's the clearest data point in April. Next, let's talk about days on market and how the MLS reports them versus what's actually happening. So MLS resets the days on market counter when a seller cancels the listing and then relists it at the same price or a lower price. In April, 13 of the 115 sold properties had done exactly that. So about 1 in 8. So MLS shows an average of 67 days to sell in April, but the true cumulative average, though, once you add back those earlier listings, was 97 days. The median is 51. So the gap between the 51 days and the 97 days, it still tells you something. A handful of properties sat for a very long time before eventually selling, and they're totally pulling the average down. Here's how that breaks down by price range. Under $400,000, the average cumulative days on market was 86. From $400,000 to $600,000, it was 73. It was actually the fastest moving price range in April. From $600,000 to $800,000, the average was 113. Still the slowest by a significant margin. From $800,000 to $1 million, the average was 146. But that number was extremely inflated by one property with a cumulative history going back almost 3 years. Without that outlier, that price point averaged around 55 days. Over $1 million, there were 4 sales, which is not enough to draw strong conclusions. The $400,000 to $600,000 range is where condos are moving the fastest. The $600,000 to $800,000 range continues to sit the longest. And on average, it matches what the Q1 data showed. Same methodology as Q1 on pricing. I compare the same price to what sellers originally asked, not the final list price after the reductions. That's the number that tells you what sellers are actually selling for. Overall, sellers got about 95.6% of their original asking price in April, roughly 4.5 cents off every dollar they were asking. By price range, under $400,000, sellers got about 95% of the original asking. From $400,000 to $600,000, they got about 95.6%. From $600,000 to $800,000, about 95.7%. From $800,000 to $1 million, they got about 97.2%. Over $1 million came in at 95.1%. But again, there was only 4 sales, so you can't read too much into that. Higher price tiers, they held closer to their asking price. Lower price units gave up the most. It's the same pattern we saw in Q1. Now, let's talk about occupancy. Of the 115 sales in April, 49% were owner-occupied, 38% were vacant, and about 7% were tenanted. The rest were unknown. That tenant number is pretty consistent with what we saw in the Q1 update. Tenanted units are hard to move in this market. The BC tenant rules make buyers cautious, showings are harder to schedule, and the units often don't present very well. If you're a seller with a tenant in place, this is worth thinking about before you decide to list. So remember, this data is Kelowna and West Kelowna only. Lower Mission had 26 sales, about 23% of the market. It was still the most active area by a wide margin. Kelowna North had 16 sales. Glenmore and North Glenmore combined had 16 sales. West Kelowna, across all sub-areas, had 13 sales. Rutland North and South combined had 11 sales. Kelowna South had 9 sales. Springfield and Spall had also had 9 sales. The University District had 5 sales. So Lower Mission, it keeps coming up on top. Glenmore combined edged up to tie Kelowna North this month. A few things stand out in the April data. The volume pulled back a lot. March had 144 sales, April had 115. That's coming off a year-over-year comparison where April 2025 had 150 sales. The spring market showed up, but just barely. At the same time, active inventory increased. Those two things together, it pushed the months of inventory from 6.5 to 8.3 in a single month. The market is now firmly more in a buyer's market territory than it was at the end of Q1. The $400,000 to $600,000 range is moving the fastest right now. And if a property is priced right in that price range and it shows well, the buyers are going to be writing offers. The $600,000 to $800,000 range, it continues to sit the longest on average. Sellers, they're still going to give up about 4.5% from the original asking price. That gap has been consistent for several months. It's what the market's telling you about where your pricing needs to be. The thing to watch heading into May is to see if the sales volume recovers, if it's going to match last year's pace, or if it's going to be below it. May 2025 had 153 sales. If May 2026 comes in significantly below that, this is going to really start to look like a buyer's market. And that's the April 2026 breakdown for Kelowna and West Kelowna condos and townhomes. If you want to know what any of this means for your specific situation, book a time to chat. You'll find the link in the description. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.